Hello, people of the world. Let's get real. I want to get real, because that's what good philosophers do. So, I just wanted to talk a little bit about death and how it's the worst thing ever. And I was thinking lately, like, how my brain works differently than most people. I think it does. Because I feel like I am constantly calculating risks. As far as, safety is concerned. I think my brain I've trained my brain almost to like robotically calculate risks. And I think I do this intuitively now. And I think that I've trained my brain in this way because, as you guys know, I want to live forever. That's kind of my main thing. Sometimes when I say things, people are like, wow, you're so worried. You're so fearful. Oh, and really, it's just my brain calculating risks, and these things that I'm scared of, it's because they're real threats to my life. I'm not just making this stuff up. Like, things are dangerous, okay? Like, let's take the refugee issue, which I've been talking about a lot lately. It is true that every refugee that enters America does represent an additional risk to my safety. This is obvious. It's just math. I mean, a certain portion of these refugees that would come into America are going to be radical terrorists. This is irrefutable. You can't argue with this. It's just the truth. And, people might say, whoa, I'm such a fearmonger. I'm overreacting. Well, no, it's just look what's happening to Europe right now. Okay, that's all the evidence I need. But anyways, the point of this video is not about refugees. I don't really want to get into that right now. The point of this video is I want to talk about, like, what is really the point of life? What is the point of life? You ever just thought about that? You ever just sat down and thought, what is this all about? I think I figured it out. The point of life is to live forever. Okay, so I've just learned to see things through a lens of survival. I'm always concerned with survival. I'm always looking in the long term. I'm concerned about long-term survival. And I feel like other people, they're kind of nearsighted because they're not thinking about the long term. What's going to happen in the future? How am I going to live forever? So when you have this mindset of like, wow, how am I going to live forever? It changes your whole perspective in life. You have this kind of eternal perspective. You're calculating risks. You're thinking about dangers and threats to your life that other people don't really consider. I try very hard to have an unbiased, honest thought process. I think that's important for any good philosopher. You need to see, without bias. And one of the main biases I think people have in life is the bias of wanting their life to be meaningful. Everyone wants their life to be meaningful, right? So that's a bias that we all have. And I've learned to see past this bias. So let me give you an example. I think that life is meaningless if we die and we cease to exist forever. Okay, to me, I just think the honest reaction to death would be one of utter horror, and to admit that life is meaningless in the face of death. Like, if you have to die, then your life was meaningless. What was the point? So this is what I'm talking about. I'm able to admit this where most people are not willing to admit this. Why can't people admit that their life is meaningless if they cease to exist forever? Like, if you die and then you're gone forever, well, what was the point? You're just a line between 2 points of nothingness. You're born, you live a little bit, you have some fun, and you die. That is meaningless, that's absurd, it's a pointless existence. Now, why can't other people admit this? Because they have a bias. They are in a state of delusion. What I just described there is a painful truth, that if you die and cease to exist, your life is meaningless. That's a horrible truth that people would rather not admit. So they shove the truth under the rug, and they form delusions, and they say, no, you know what? My life is meaningful, even if I die. How is your life meaningful if you die? I don't get it. It's not meaningful. And I don't care what you've accomplished, okay? I don't care how much you've experienced. I don't care what kind of relationships you've had. I don't care if you're the richest person on earth or the most famous person on earth. If you end up in the ground, a rotting corpse, and you lose your consciousness forever, you lose your mind, there is no you anymore, then your life was insignificant and meaningless. That is just the honest philosophical position. And to not admit that, I think, is true intellectual weakness. It shows that you're in a state of denial. If you are able to admit that your life is meaningless if you cease to exist, right? If you can admit that to yourself, well, then you have either two options. You can just eat, drink, and be merry, that kind of attitude, because tomorrow you die, right? Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die. Well, you can do that, but your life is still going to be meaningless if you die, because it doesn't matter how much pleasure you experienced in your life before you die. You're still going to die, so it was all pointless. It was all for nothing. So you can do that. I highly advise against doing that. Now, I'm not saying that eating and drinking and being merry is a bad thing. It's more of a metaphor. I think it was a verse in the Bible that said, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. I think that might be a direct quote. It's just the idea that basically you're living a hedonistic lifestyle without concern for safety anymore because you've already, in a sense, given up. You've accepted that you're going to die, so you're just going to have fun because, death is just around the corner. It's just that idea that I'm talking about. It's a mentality that's the thing that we need to avoid, is the mentality of accepting death, which is the mentality that most people are in right now. They've just accepted death. They've given up, so they're just going to have fun until they die. That's their end game. That's their plan. It's pathetic. It's pathetic because it shows they have such a weak survival instinct. I mean, of all the instincts of a human being, the survival instinct is clearly the most important instinct. If any instinct is going to be strong, you'd want it to be the survival instinct. Our life is all we have. Our existence. If you don't have an existence, you have nothing. So, protect your existence. Let's live carefully, cautiously as possible. It's all about survival. It boils down to survival. Why not save the dangerous, risky stuff for virtual reality? Right? In the future, if we're going to have virtual reality and all this kind of technology, if you have any weird, hedonistic, dangerous lifestyle behaviors, whatever it is, why not save it for a virtual environment where there's no danger of being killed? So people who are living a dangerous life, they are really being impatient. It's like they can't just wait a little bit until the technology comes around, the virtual reality where you can create whatever you want inside that virtual world. You can experience whatever you want. It's coming. It's only a matter of time. So I say, live as safely, as cautiously as possible. And, curiosity killed the cat, right? That's the saying. So don't let your curiosity for experience and pleasure drive you into death. That's a bad move. You should be focused on living forever. You should be focused on how to increase your chances of living forever. And I've said it before that living forever obviously is not a guarantee. We can't guarantee that we're going to live forever. Living forever is a process that literally would last forever. So all we can do is just try to increase our odds of living forever. Make your lifestyle extremely safe and healthy. So I remember I think it was a few weeks ago, there was a Star Trek actor that died. It was Anton Yelchin, I believe. He died in a freak car accident where he got crushed by his Jeep or something. Okay, think about this guy. I think he was just 27. So, from his perspective, would it have mattered if he died at 27 or 127? Does it matter? I mean, if you end up in the same place, if you end up dead, why would it matter if you got to live an extra 100 years? I guess my point is, there's really no point to living at all if you can't live forever. Like, a temporary life is meaningless because it's just nothingness to nothingness. One point of nothingness to another point of nothingness. Birth to death. So what's the point? And this is why I love Woody Allen, because he understands this. He's talked about it. I even made a video on this channel called, I think it was Woody Allen Explains the Big Picture, where he talked about basically the absurdity of life, that, in 100 years or 100 and something years, that basically everyone on the planet's going to be dead. Everyone alive right now on the planet is going to be dead. And there's going to be an entirely new set of people alive. And so you're just dead. You're just flushed down the toilet into eternal non-existence, oblivion. The absurdity of that. Sound and fury. Life is a bunch of sound and fury signifying nothing. If. Okay? If. That's always what I say. It's a big if. If you have to die. But we don't have to die. That's my point. We can potentially live forever. Like, living forever is possible. But, anyways, if someone cannot admit that life is a bunch of sound and fury signifying nothing, if you die, if someone cannot admit the meaninglessness of a temporary existence, that to me, that's the intellectual weakness. That's the philosophical weakness. The good philosopher is brave and honest enough to live with the painful truth, which is that death renders life meaningless. That's really the point. Death renders life meaningless. And from what I've seen in the atheist community, a lot of atheists just cannot admit this to themselves. They are stuck in a delusion that their life is meaningful, that there's a point to their existence, even though they're going to die, right? They just pretend like their life is still meaningful. It's weakness. I guess I just want people to just, it's like taking the red pill in the Matrix. The red pill, it's admit that if you die, okay, if you can't live forever, let's say that hypothetically, if living forever was impossible, then your life is nothing but just a huge tragedy. There's no point to it. And, when you can acknowledge that life is meaningless unless you live forever, that's like taking the red pill. But you got a bunch of people taking the blue pill, wanting to hang on to this delusional sense of meaning in the face of death. And what I like about Christians actually, I've heard a lot of Christians will basically kind of give the same line of reasoning that I'm giving right now. That unless you can live forever, life is meaningless. At least the idea of death bothers Christians. Like, if death was eternal non-existence, that would really bother Christians. I mean, that's their whole motivation for being Christians, is they want eternal life. They want eternal life though they think they're going to get it in heaven. The idea of ceasing to exist really bothers Christians. And for that, I actually respect Christians a lot more than the atheists who, you ask them and they'll say, death doesn't even bother them. It's not even a problem for them.
Okay, the good news of atheism, the gospel of atheism, is essentially nothing. That nothing happens after death. There's nothing to worry about. There's nothing to fear. When after you die, you are returned to that nothingness that you were before you were born. If we are right, and nothing happens after death, death, therefore, is not a problem. Life is the problem.
What a bunch of hippy-dippy baloney.
That is ridiculous. I mean, these atheists that aren't bothered by death, I can't fathom those people. It's like they're not, oh my gosh, they're such in a state, we attack Christians for being delusional. Well, I think those atheists are just as delusional, more delusional. Okay? The atheists who are not bothered by death, those people are more delusional than the Christians and these other religions who at least they want eternal life, To me, if you want to live forever, okay, the Christians want eternal life. To me, that's not weakness. To me, that's a sign of being smart. And in fact, smarter than the atheists who would say that they don't want to live forever. So, in a lot of ways, I actually relate more to religious people because they at least want eternal life. Now, of course, I'm trying to change the atheist movement, and a lot of atheists are coming around, and they want to live forever. And of course, there's a lot of atheists already in the transhumanist movement, which is great. So, the moral of this story is death should bother you. I also want to talk about fear a little bit. Fear is also not a weakness. Okay, fear of death especially. It just shows that you love life. That's all the fear of death is. It just shows how much you want to survive, and that's your survival instinct is creating that fear in your brain. Our brain is creating that fear because if you act on that fear, it's going to help your odds of living and surviving, right? People who act on their fears oftentimes get saved from deadly situations. Well, we can apply that in the long term too, in terms of like living forever. If you have fear of death, you're more likely going to have the types of actions that are going to increase your chances of living forever. All right, someone like myself who is terrified of death, that fear helps me every day to live as safely as I possibly can. That fear is a motivation for me. And I think that's the real power of fear. And that's why I say that fear is my superpower. And, people say that Trump plays on people's fear, and that's why he's so popular. And that might be. And there's nothing wrong about that. My fear of death and, fear of refugees and fear of illegal aliens and fear of, crime from illegal aliens, that definitely plays into why I'm voting for Trump, and I'm not ashamed of that. I mean, that's a smart reason to vote for Trump. If you want to have a safe, secure nation, you want to have strong borders. And survival, it's all about survival. I'm voting for Trump because I want to survive. I'm voting for Trump because I want to live forever. And if you follow my channel, you probably noticed that I talk about self-interest a lot. And some would call it selfishness. And I have no problem with admitting that. I mean, my motivations are primarily selfish. I want to live forever, but there's nothing wrong with that. I think that really everything can be boiled down to selfishness if you really wanted to overanalyze it. Everyone is selfish, and it's unavoidable. Everyone's doing what they want to do. Everyone is following in line with their own priorities and motivations, right? So, yeah, I mean, it's good to have self-interest, especially if you want to survive. I mean, how are you gonna survive and live forever if you don't have self-interest, right? And self-interest is just a politically correct way of saying selfishness, right? What's the difference between selfishness and self-interest? One, self-interest just has a lot more politically correct sound to it, right? But they're both really the same thing. So let's talk about Trump. I'm a huge Trump supporter. I love that Trump wants to put America first. He says this all the time in his speeches, you know. I think there's a quote where he said, I will no longer surrender this country or its people to the false song of globalism. Globalism, from what I've researched it, these globalists are promoting things like multiculturalism, mass immigration, at the expense of the safety of the citizens of those nations. So he wants to just put the safety of Americans first. That is, to me, freaking awesome. That's what I want. Survival is the bottom line, and refugees do represent a huge threat to me. And, you know, some people would say, oh, this is so tribalistic of you, Rowan. Oh, how could you just be so tribalistic? Well, you know what? We have to be tribalistic in order to survive in this world. It's a tribalistic world. There's a bunch of other tribes, and they're all fighting against me. Look, we have to form a tribe. If you want to say America is a tribe, yeah, I'm all for that. I'm all for protecting my tribe of America. And, you know, it's really about the American values. This isn't about racism. This isn't about being prejudiced against someone because they have a different race or a different ethnicity. This is about a rightful prejudice against people with backwards values. It's the values of people that I have a problem with. It's not their race. I don't care what race you are. I don't care if you're, you know, yellow, black, or white. If you have American westernized, civilized values of justice and, you know, if you're a good person who cares about freedom and kind of libertarian values where people should be allowed to do what they want, if you're not trying to suppress those freedoms, then, you know, you're on my side. You know, it's about, you know, people say, oh, Trump, he's dividing people. Oh, he's so divisive. You know, I don't think so. I think he's bringing people together, the people who are really, you know, patriotic Americans who, whatever their race is, they want America to be protected, right? They feel that these refugees coming in from Syria, that they're really incompatible with Western values. And that's just so obvious. I mean, right there, the writing's on the wall. Okay, look what happened to Europe. I don't want that in America. I want America to be protected. I want to preserve this. America's like the best. America is the best place on earth. It's the safest place. And I want to keep it that way. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, as far as multiculturalism, I'm not against mixing cultures if the cultures can cohabitate and like live peacefully together. I'm against one culture invading and destroying another culture. And that's my concern. That's what I see happening in Europe. You know, when you go to Europe, you see these Muslims forming little Muslim ghettos, and they kind of all segregate themselves to certain areas, and they're not really assimilating. That's the problem. You know, multiculturalism only works if all the cultures believe in multiculturalism and respect each other, mutual. Right? It has to work mutually. And I don't think that's happening in Europe, and I don't think it would happen in America. The question that I always ask in regards to like if I support someone's policies or not, the question I always ask is this good for my safety? And when I look at Donald Trump's policies, I ask that question, and the answer is yes. Trump is good for my safety. Hillary's policies, her immigration policies, are not. And look, I don't care what people think. 65,000 extra refugees, that's just a start. Okay, that's what Hillary Clinton wants to bring into America. Just as a start. That's what she said. That's a threat. Okay, let's not minimize that threat. It's a threat. 65,000 extra Syrian refugees. Come on. If your values are incompatible with the USA, then you are incompatible with the USA. Okay, so that's my concern with these refugees. They're going to have incompatible values, and or they're going to be terrorists. So that's my concern. Always thinking about safety and my own survival. And when it comes to safety and my own survival, Trump is clearly the winner. Because his immigration policy. And immigration is so huge. Like, if someone's got a horrible immigration policy, how can you even consider that person for president? We're in a war, okay? This is a war against primitive, animalistic savages. And they want to rape us. Rape the women, right? Or I think in Islam, there's a lot of raping of little boys going on, too. So... this is, we're talking pedophiles. We're talking really backwards culture. I mean, child marriage is hugely popular in Muslim majority countries. So do we want to be importing these values into America when they're going to be trying to fight for Sharia law? And it's also about how these Muslims would be voting. They're going to be voting for socialism. That's how refugees vote. Most of them, by far, they vote for socialism, and they're kind of drain the government of its resources. And look, I don't want that here. I don't need that here. If we want to live forever, I'm all about living forever. And if we want to live forever, we need to protect ourselves. Bottom line, to protect ourselves from all threats. And these refugees are a threat. And, aging. Okay, aging. There's a big threat. If we eventually get old and die, none of this matters. The whole conversation about refugees and protecting America, none of that matters if we get old and die from aging. It was all for nothing. So, while we're trying to protect America from foreign invaders and from Islamic terrorism, what I consider to be a huge threat to my existence, well, we also got to be protecting ourselves from natural causes of aging, which is aging. Such a sad, horrible thing.
And I wish you'd quit looking at all those old pictures. Wouldn't they make you sad? You hear me? What? I don't have my hearing aid on. What the hell do you want? I says, quit looking at all those pictures. I haven't seen them before. But gee, don't they make you sad?
I mean, aging. If aging does not get you mad, I don't know what would get you mad. If aging, right? Getting old. What is worse than that? And I can't tell you how many times that I've heard people say things like, oh, aging doesn't bother them. That's what people say. Like, if aging doesn't bother you, I'm sorry, but you're very deluded. Like, aging should make you sad. You should think about the fact that you're going to get old and die, and that should freak you out, but it should motivate you. It should enrage you, and you should be so afraid of aging that it inspires you to be an anti-aging activist for the sake of your eternal life. I don't want to die. That's what it boils down to. I don't want to die. I want to live forever, and so should you. If you're a self-respecting human, like, if you love yourself, why wouldn't you want to live forever? As I'm making this video, think about this. As I'm making this video, there are people taking their last breath. Okay, they're dying in deathbeds, in hospitals, old, dementia, and then they're gonna die. Their bodies will be either lowered into the ground or incinerated in a crematorium. I mean, this is the nightmare. This is the nightmare of life. And I think I'm going on too long here. Just leave you with this last thought is just death. Death is evil, okay? So try your hardest to live forever and give it your all. Put 100% into your eternal life, because it is what's most important. And let me summarize by saying, if you die and you cease to exist, don't fool yourself. Too many people are fooling themselves. Don't fool yourself. If you die and you really do cease to exist forever, life was pointless. So, hang your hat on eternal life. Living forever is possible.